Okay, welcome to our second video. This is the back 9 at Horsley Lodge, and if this is your first video, tune into these. It's a course strategy guide for an average 18 handicapper who hits the ball about 220 yards off the tee and hits their 7-iron 135 yards. So we're back to the par 5 10th, and we know that with Horsley there is not much point in trying to lay up on many of the holes. So if we use the 10th for example, here is the tee's down here, 230 yard is the outer ring, and trying to lay it up just brings the bunkers into play. So we do see here that it's not super wide. That's kind of the fairway. We've got 50 yards. We are going to miss that fairway, there's no doubt about it. We're going to miss that a fair amount of the time. If we put the dispersion in there on that tee shot, you can see how many of those balls are going to miss the fairway or put us in a blocked out position. But it's simply not worth hitting a 3-wood to bring the bunkers into play. Although we don't want to be too conservative off the tee, it really comes down to what we do with our second shot at Horsley. So you can see that, to lay it up to there, we've got 240 yards to get to the green. And we simply can't do that as an 18 handicapper. So the second shot wants to probably come into this area, which is 150 yards away. And that leaves 140 yards into the flag. So best case scenario really for an 18 handicapper is a good drive, 150 yards, 160 yards second shot, and then 130, 140 yards onto the green. 3 good shots and you got yourself a par. But we know that we don't necessarily need to make pars. Bogeys are absolutely fine. So in this situation, if we miss the fairway, we advance the ball up the fairway, maybe not as far as this, maybe we can, and then we play on short of the green and on 4 and 2 putt and walk away with a 6. 3 good shots and you've got a good par chance. What we could say, and this is the theme, I know I've spoken about this before, but where a lot of the 18 handicappers will fall down is they'll get, for the second shot, they'll be hitting 3 woods, trying to get the ball as close as they can to the fairway, and that's where they duff it. That's where they top it, fat it, stick it in the trees again, and then you're chipping out once, then you're chipping out again, and then it turns into a bit of a nightmare. So it's just using something like a 4 or 5 hybrid, advancing it down the fairway, 160 yards, and then moving on. On to hole 11. So hole 11, we have, for a scratch handicapper, low handicapper, this would be a relatively simple 2-shotter. But for an 18 handicapper, I would recommend playing this as a 3-shotter. Get on the green for 3 and 2 putt. The reason for that is that you can do that. That's 180 yards off the tee, 130 yards short of the green, and then chipping onto the flag. You can do that as an 18 handicapper almost every single time. You can see where the dispersion is. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's good enough, and then walk away with a 5 at worst. Good chip or a good putt will leave you with a 4. We only need 3 or 4 pars and all the rest bogeys, and then we're down to 13 handicap, 14 handicap, and that's what this strategy is all about. You'll also notice that as we get closer to the flag, the dispersion of the ball changes. With wedges, we tend to hit them long and short. With longer shots, they tend to go more left and right. And this is one of the main reasons why so many players use different length backswings, and they learn how far the wedges go, and they're turning their wedges into separate clubs with different length backswings. And not all players do that, but that's one of the reasons why that came about. On to the par 3, which is pretty straightforward. You would just want to hit to the right of the green and avoid these bunkers. And this would definitely be the next one here. This would be one of my featured holes. Now, you can see here that the course Pro visualizer that I'm using, it's recommending that you hit the ball to here and then playing it up as a 2-shotter. But for the majority of 18 handicappers, that is too far. It's too difficult a shot. So we would set the target further back. The problem is it's going to be pitching about here. And how far does that make the fairway? That makes the fairway 32 yards long. So if we try and go for the centre of the fairway, we are probably 25% chance. We've got 25% chance of hitting that, and that's why I would recommend playing this as a 3-shotter, aiming at the edge of this wall, and then trying to hit it in that 85-yard block. Yes, you can get blocked out and hit by the trees, but you can still advance the ball forward and get your second shot into this area. Even if you hit a bad shot, you still should be able to advance the ball 100 yards. From here to here is 100 yards. So 108 yards, and then it's 72 yards onto the green. Now, the majority of golfers, 18 handicappers, if you ask them on that tee, would you take a 5? Most of them would snap your hands off. So it's another one of these holes where there is no layup. There's no real place to lay up short of the water. To hit it 180 yards, 160 yards off the tee, very difficult hole, but I'd have to play it down the right into that area. Moving on to the next hole is the par 5, which is the 14th. Again, we could argue that there is very little point in laying up with a 3-wood. We know that tee shot's going to arrive in that position, which doesn't give us a particularly wide fairway. We know that some of the balls are going to land. That's 38 yards. The fairway's 38 yards. But what we can say is that we can still advance that ball up the fairway. If we do hit it into the trees, we can still move it kind of into this area and play that on as a 4-shotter. So the poor results will come, like we said a few times, where we're in this position and we try and hit the ball 200 yards, 220 yards with the 3-wood, and we put a top on it, or we fat it, or we hit it into the trees. So again, if we hit a fantastic tee shot, I would lay up short second, maybe hit the second shot 160, just set that second target to there, and then that leaves 120 in, which, yes, 3 perfect shots and you've got a par, but with any of those, if the shot doesn't quite come off, we can still walk away with that bogey, which is more than good enough for an 18 handicapper. Now, my friends would simply go for that hole. It plays around about 15 yards down the hill, so they're only going to be carrying it, 250, and they are over the ditch, over the out of bounds area, and it's the easiest hole on the course. But if you see here that the distance here in the fairway, right where your ball is going to land for the 230-yard drive down the hill, which is going to carry it around about 20 yards further, 15 yards further. It's only 39 yards. We know that the average tour pro hits it into a 70-yard gap, so 25-30% of the time you're looking at out of bounds, in the water. There's water both sides. It's an absolute nightmare. So this is where I would recommend playing this as a 3-shotter. 1, 2, and that leaves you with 180 yards off the tee, 90 yards to the corner, and 70 yards onto the green, which then you put the dispersion for that. You know, that you could stay there all day, play it that way, and you would find it hard, unless your putting was terrible, to not make a 5. And that is where we get that consistency from. We don't get consistency from having a perfect golf swing. No one hits straight shots all day long. Even the tour pros, they're hitting into that wide gap. So the consistency comes from course strategy. This is relatively straightforward. It's just a par 3. Aim at the flag, chip and putt. And now we've got the last 2 holes. Again, another one where I don't see any need or any point in laying up and not hitting driver. The reason for that is if you do hit it left or right, we can still advance the ball up the fairway. But it's certainly not one where we're going to try and get the green in 2. It plays as a par 5 now. So if you hit it 230 off the tee, you've got 150 and then 70 yards into the green. And that's the ideal. The majority of the time, you're going to be in the trees. You're advancing the ball up the fairway, let's say to around about here. And this is where the difficulty comes in. So do you go for it? Do you not? I would argue that the majority of players will be better off playing that as a 4 onto the green and moving away from what can be a very tricky course ruiner. A good scorecard ruiner on the last hole, second to last hole. Finally, we've got the 18th, and it definitely follows the same pattern that we've had most of the way through Horsley Lodge, and that is that there's no point laying up with the tee shots. We'd set the target, centre the fairway, play it as a 3-shotter. If you hit an ideal first shot, you've still got 215 yards to play. Second shot can lay up short with 160 yards, and that leaves you 50 yards in for the third shot. Perfect chip or perfect pitch and a good putt, and you've got yourself a par. But the majority, some of the time you're going to be in the trees. Take the medicine. This is where we don't want to be going with a 3-wood and trying to, go for that par again. Simply, if you do hit into the trees, bring the target back, and you're going to have yourself a 90 or 100 yards wedge into the green. So there's a theme there, definitely, that we want to be hitting driver where we nearly all the time, but accepting that our second shots are not going to be going for the green. We need to be laying up with a 4 or 5 hybrid rather than your 3 woods where we're trying to make those pars. And we do want to be able to putt well. So 2 putting when we get on the green, good leg putts, good short putts, as well as wedge play from 50, 60 yards. We want to be able to hit the green from those kind of distances. They're not difficult to do. It's the easiest types of shots. Shortest clubs, most loft, easiest to hit straight. So you need to spend some time working on that part of your game if you're going to follow this type of strategy. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. If you want to leave us a like, comment, and subscribe, and any other ideas on different courses, then let me know. Thank you very much.